If you ever find yourself having to file a personal injury lawsuit, there are a few factors that can potentially hurt your case.
Joining us now to discuss what those factors are is Meesha Moulton with the law offices of Meesha Moulton. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Very
We're
good.
Great.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome back in.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. So there's a couple factors we have to think about when it comes to personal injury lawsuits.
Yes.
Let's dive right into that. Give us some tips here as to, what might actually hurt our case.
So I think the biggest thing that hurts your case almost immediately right at the scene of the accident is not calling the police. So you want to get an investigation going right away. You don't want to admit any fault or anything along those lines. Try not to speak to anybody at the scene other than the police officer. So when you're communicating with the other driver, just keep it very basic, collect information from them, take pictures of your car as well as the other vehicle. And then at that point, just wait for the police to arrive and conduct their investigation. So it kind of starts there. And then from there, you'll probably hear from the insurance company, whether that's your insurance company or the opposite one. You can speak to your insurance company, but you want to make sure not to give a statement to the other side of any sort whatsoever. Always speak to an attorney first. So
it seems to me like, you're mentioning a lot of things to bear in mind, and it could be quite overwhelming at that moment of, that point of impact of what's happened. And also, it seems like time is of the essence. Is that an important factor to make sure everything starts rolling?
Yes, time is probably one of the most important things in a personal injury case. We want to make sure that the investigation happens right away at the scene. We also want to make sure we get you into treatment right away. One of the biggest things that can really affect your case is delaying treatment. The insurance company will take any reason to deny your claim. So if they see that there's a gap, but you're claiming that you're hurt, they're going to say, how hurt exactly were you?
And I think it's also important, Meesha, to talk more about the police report, because I know we've kind of touched on that before,
yes.
But it's one of those things too that, sometimes people, whatever the incident is, they'll say like, well, I wasn't that hurt, so I didn't think I needed one. Right? So even whatever the damage is, you still have to have that.
It's just important because, it's basically a third party coming out, evaluating what happened, and then basically putting it in writing for us. So at that point, even if you're not hurt, sometimes the actual shock from the accident wears off and you may feel pain later, and you may feel hurt a couple of days down the road, and then at that point you're seeking treatment. But also just to make sure that there's no fault put on you when you weren't necessarily the party that was at fault for the accident.
Right.
Yeah. So when we talk about fault, do we talk about failure to prove liability? I mean, where does that come into play as well?
Yeah, so liability is the main thing. Liability essentially means, the party who's going to be placed at fault for the accident. We're an at-fault state, so meaning whoever is responsible for the accident, their insurance company is the one who ends up paying for the property damage, so the vehicles to be fixed, as well as any medical bills that are related to the personal injury claim. So in that situation, liability usually gets proven sometime within the first 30 to 60 days is usually pretty standard after we've collected all the pertinent information and provided it to the insurance companies.
Now there's this factor, preserving evidence. Elaborate a bit on that for us.
Yeah, so preserving evidence could be essentially just meaning whatever happened at the scene of the accident. So that's another reason to make sure that you call the police so they can take statements. A lot of times witnesses are at the scene of the accident, but they're almost impossible to get a hold of afterwards. So you want to make sure that you preserve their statements as well. Anything along those lines, pictures, once you take your vehicle to the repair shop, it's hard to maybe get the right type of pictures, so we want to make sure that we have pictures from the scene of the accident.
Now before you go, what is the importance, including things like you just mentioned, of us, speaking to insurance? What's the important factors of that?
So you don't want to. You can speak to your insurance company, but you do not want to speak to the other, the opposite insurance company. The reason being is they will try to get a statement from you, or they will attempt to possibly place some kind of comparative fault on you, meaning
speak to Meesha first.
Exactly. That's what you want to do.
That's what you want to do, number one. Meesha, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. The law offices of Meesha Moulton are located on Howard Hughes Parkway. For more information, you can visit MeeshaMoultonLaw.com.